Hi, welcome back to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Lelly. And you guys, today is such an interesting episode. It is with Jessica Lewis, who is the author of the Kids Gratitude Journal. And she reached out to me. She found me on Instagram, reached out to me, and I just love how social media works. And she was like, hey, this is what I'm doing, and your podcast really resonates with me. What do you think about getting on? And, send it over. And I don't ever do pre-calls before, we just, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, then I won't publish the episode. But I was super excited to talk to Jessica. She's been married to her husband for almost 10 years. She is she calls herself an intentional parent who desires to raise prayerful, purposeful, and mindful children. She's been a business owner her entire life, and she has developed good habits which has helped her thrive in so many different sectors. And she wanted to give the same gift to her children. And that's why she wrote this gratitude journal and devotional for kids. She has found that it's given children a resource to begin building habits that will serve them for the rest of their lives. And, she's actually found that when children do the journal regularly, parents get insights into their kids' worlds. Who doesn't want more insight into their kids' worlds? Hear thoughts that they've never heard before, and end up having a deeper connection to what is happening in their lives. And the kids end up having a greater appreciation for their things, their families, and the blessings that are all around them. And we really, I've never met Jessica before, never really talked to her before, except on Instagram, a couple voice chats back and forth. And, always before my episodes, and you'll hear it in today's episode, I usually ask them beforehand, is there anything that's off limits? And you never know how these kinds of conversations can go, being with somebody who you've never met before and never talked to before. And I am just incredibly excited because, I got her to open up. She was so brave to be vulnerable with somebody that she's never met before, talking about the dynamic growing up with having a dad who pretty much walked out of her life after a few months she was born, and being raised for a while by her mom, grandma, and grandpa. And then her mom bringing in a stepdad who, she didn't have a good relationship with. He was abusive towards her special needs sister, verbally abusive towards her, and that relationship just being really rocky. And we talked about, the dynamic of that and bringing that into, what was it like for her to date, and what was she looking for? And she shares her story about, wanting so badly to be loved. And that was her mission, was just to be loved. And her and I could totally identify with so much of the same things, so carrying that stuff into marriage and the importance of healing that, and how she's been on a journey of healing that and seeing her parents both from a different life, and then carrying that into a parenting style and allowing our kids and giving our kids the space to be exactly who they are, to know that they're loved just as they are, that they're in a safe space, and the importance of admitting, when we're wrong, and being open and having a safe place to share all of that with. I am just really grateful and feel like, God is really working so much in my life and in our lives. And that's so true in this episode today. It was definitely God had his hand in it, and I cannot wait for you guys to hear the rest of it. Welcome to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm Katrina Lelly, certified life coach, aspiring author, lover of people, mama in recovery, and student of life. Each week, I will bring you love, inspiration, the real life stuff people are afraid to talk about, and guests who are willing to shine their light for you. I give you self-care practices and mindset tips to help you shatter the negative stories you tell yourself. Now is the time to step into the beautiful, loved, whole woman you already are. Let's walk this journey together. Hi, welcome back to the Just As We Are podcast. I'm your host, Katrina Lelly. And you guys, I am incredibly excited about this particular conversation I'm about to have with Jessica Lewis. Social media is so amazing that you get to meet people from all over the world, different walks of life, and you just never know who's going to come into your life. And Jessica and I have never met. She actually reached out to me and told me a little bit about her mission and what she's doing. And I just felt that, right away, you usually can tell if you have a connection of some way or if there's somebody that you want to get to know more. And I felt that way with Jessica. And so I'm super excited about this conversation to not only just learn more about her, but her mission and that she gets to share it with you guys. Welcome, Jessica. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I love why you even started the podcast. I'm super stoked to be here with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This journey has been really amazing and fun, and it connects me to women that, we never would have connected before. And, getting to be on here and have conversations and share women who are on a mission themselves and, help share your guys' messages too is just means so much to me and brings so much value to everybody. So I'm grateful that you reached out and asked me to be a part of that journey for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and we can kind of dive into your story.
Awesome. I'm from Southern California, grew up in San Bernardino, definitely in the ghetto, and got out of there as fast as I could. I've been married to my husband for 10 years. Or almost 10 years. We have 2 boys that are absolutely crazy, 4 and 7. And my entire adult life, I've always been extremely driven. And so I've owned a business that entire time, a couple different businesses along the way. So just trying to be the best mom that I can be, best wife that I can be, and at the same time, serve other people in multiple capacities.
So what has really driven your passion to serving others?
It has been so neat. I started out first in the insurance industry and I recruited and trained, and I just loved being able to see people for bigger than what they were. I feel like my whole life I've struggled with feeling loved and feeling like I'm enough and just trying to fill like almost this hole in me with my outside achievements. So it's been neat to pour into people and see them bigger than what they were, what they are and what they see themselves as, and give them the steps in order to step into that so that they then fully feel that.
I love that. And one important question I always ask my guests, and I usually ask it before we start recording, is there anything that's really off limits with you when it comes to how open you're willing to be?
No, that's okay. We can just go for it if we need to.
It's because I always want to respect, my guests. And I understand that there are things that, that may have happened that they're not healed from yet, or they're working on, or some things that are fresh. And so I always like to ask that question. And, I don't usually tell my listeners that, but I think it's important to know, most oftentimes everybody's pretty willing to be pretty open. And so you mentioned that need to feel loved or to kind of fill that hole. Do you know where that came from? Was it from growing up? Was there something missing in your life that you didn't receive yourself?
Totally. So when I was born, my biological dad, I think, was there for a couple months and then left. So I grew up with my mom and my grandma and grandpa. But really, I feel like my grandma and grandpa raised me for the first 5 years of my life until my mom met my stepdad. And so when I was 5, I remember going to a dinner and everyone's excited around me. And I had just learned how to spell my first last name, which was Lilybridge. And I felt like a magical little princess, like Lilybridge. Like it just feels like I was just special, and it feels feminine, and it was great. And so at this dinner, they're like, okay, we're celebrating that you've officially been adopted. And we're changing your name now to Rubottom, which is Reubottom, which is totally not fun, right? And hard to spell at the same time. And how my mom explained it to me was, it was the day that your dad gave up his rights to you. And I didn't ever realize how much that affected me. But I then grew up with a father figure that was really cold and distant. I had a sister with special needs, and he was verbally abusive to her. I don't ever feel like he was verbally abusive to me, but my parents were constantly yelling, always angry. And so I just feel like at a young age, I decided that if I was going to be seen, or if I was going to be loved, or if I was going to feel almost secure, I was going to be in control of it. And so me taking control of it at that age meant I was going to get good grades. And then when I played sports, I was going to go all out in sports. And then in business, I was going to be the best in business. And so I feel like I still have to like adjust myself back to where my identity. I always told people that I know my identity in God in my head, but it's really hard in my heart. Like there's like a disconnect somewhere because I want to fill it with doing things, by achieving things, by being something to someone so that I can get their approval versus I just have it.
That totally makes sense. So did your family grow up? Did you go to church when you grew up? Like, how did you know of who God was?
No, I did not go to church. Or maybe when I was younger, I went to a Catholic school from kindergarten through third grade, but my parents didn't practice. We would go on like holidays. They just did what they thought they were supposed to do. So I did not grow up going to church. When I was in high school, I had a family that I was super close with, and I would go every once in a while, go to youth groups with them or go to like beach trips with them. But all I ever remember was like just bawling. Like I would just cry my eyes out as they were worshiping, and it like deeply affected me emotionally. But I didn't know what was going on inside of me. It took me being an adult and then going on my own to figure out at 19, I became baptized. So then I started to build a foundation, but then it was still hard because I was so stuck in my old ways of growing up.
Oh, I love that. I myself did not, my parents grew up Catholic themselves, but we never went to church or anything like that. My first introduction to religion and church was at a youth group with a friend in junior high. And that was after my parents had separated. But I always had known who God was. I'm sure my mom or something had, talked about God. So I always had a concept of God, but it was never supported until I was growing up with my parents. So I was just very curious about that side of that and like where it comes with. I believe all of us are born with a concept of God in some way. And then, of course, whatever happens in our family dynamics, how that shifts. So share a little bit more on, that relationship with your dad and growing up, and what's it like now? How have you grown from that or come from that and healed from that? Or maybe that's something you're still working on.
I was very angry for a very, very long time, at both dads, I think. But the dad that I grew up with, I absolutely hated. I mean, I hated my mom for letting him yell at my sister. I hated, and stayed married to him. I hated him for who he was. I remember, as a teenager, I remember going to hug him one time and he literally moved out of the way. Like, who does that?
Wow.
And so I was mad and angry and I stayed away for a very long time. And so the last 10 years, I've been working on myself and working on forgiveness and trying to appreciate the person that it's made me become, because it's turned me into an extremely strong person. And then only through that appreciation could I then shift how I saw him. Because and I feel like God had to even help me forgive him, because it's like, how can you be like that as a person? Yet I had to understand that he had his struggles growing up, right? He was adopted into a family. His dad treated him like he treated people. They didn't talk about emotions or talk about things. So they lived with resentment, and he showed his love in other ways. Even though I felt I needed them in affection, he showed them in other ways. So once I was able to begin to recognize the ways he shared his love, I then could appreciate those times. And now I'm to the place where I can joke around with my dad about it. And we were at Disneyland one day and my dad said, "I love you," in front of my mom. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't think I've heard you say that." I'm like, "No, Mom, it's happened 2 times this year." Like that. We are like, this is a record. So now we can joke about it. But before, I was definitely not able to joke about it. And with my biological dad, it didn't bother me that he wasn't there for a while. But then once I started to dig deeper into my emotions, started to work through some things, I realized I actually was angry at him too. I was an angry person. I'm like, who does, like, how can, after, probably especially after having kids, how can you walk away from a child? So, when my son was about a year old, my first son, my older son, I took him out there to meet my biological dad and just felt like I wanted to do my part, whether he could do his part or not, and we could have a relationship that was going to be on him. However, I needed to do my part. So I've gone out there and I've met my biological dad 3 times. He's met both of my children, and that's the extent of our relationship. So
Yeah.
it's definitely been a process.
It is. And I'm not sure that that process ever goes away. It's like peeling back the onion, there's layers upon layers and layers. And I so resonate with your story in, having that anger, because we as kids don't know. All we have is this idea of our mom and dad, and they're our heroes, and we love them, and we want to be nurtured and taken care of. And when they fail to meet these expectations that they have no idea we've placed on them, but we see from maybe other sources or other families or what's in the media, or, that natural desire that's in us, and they're not able to comfort us in that way or be present in that way, it definitely will bring not only anger, but sadness. Did you ever uncover that sadness? Because there's got to be a grieving there of a relationship that's not there.
Totally. And I think you hit it on the head. I feel like that my emotion with my dad's was anger, and the emotion with my mom was sadness. But I didn't realize it was sadness until I realized the expectations that I was putting on her. Like, she was the one, like, just in the last couple of probably just in the last year even, that I've been able to forgive. I went through a lot of personal development courses. So I thought, okay, if my mom goes through them, then we will have the relationship that I'm looking for and we'll be able to do this. So she went through them, and then nothing changed. I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I'm still getting triggered. She's still getting triggered. Like, we'll just spiral in this trigger of, like, we're both in the relationship needing love. It was like we're both trying to suck energy almost from each other, like needing the other one to fill it, but we couldn't fill each other's love. And so I realized that I had the expectation of her to be this loving, nurturing, caring mom. It was like I was expecting both of them to nurture me in this certain way. And and she actually sent it to me in a text message. She's like, Jessica, you want me to be someone that I'm not. And it's never going to be like that. So at one point, like 6 months ago, I was like, well, we're not ever going to be able to have a relationship then. And it was then that I went to an event, and it was all about my identity in Christ, and finally felt like God filled like this hole in my heart where I knew I was his daughter. I knew that he created me in his image. I knew that I was redeemed. I was forgiven. And because I was his daughter, I didn't need anything else from my mom. So only could it have been like a miracle from him. Like, I don't even know exactly what happened that weekend, yet I walked away just having this grounding in, I can come to a relationship with my mom and get what she can give me, and I can give to her, but she doesn't need to fill me with anything, just her presence. So it's definitely been a journey. I mean, I left the house at 17. I'm 35 years old. It's been 18 years. And I finally feel like I don't get triggered by them. My dad can still have this certain tone of voice that he uses, especially around my sister because she lives with him, or just being in the house. That energy can trigger me again and get me. When I'm around them, I go to this small place. I kind of shrink in and get a little quieter and just almost don't want to be seen. So it's been interesting to see me take that energy into the world. And I started to notice where I do that around other people as well. And so I've been able to break that pattern. Once I noticed that that's what I did, I've been able to start to break that pattern and be able to be bigger and be myself, even in the presence of their energy that they bring.
Oh my goodness. You're giving me chills. Just the excitement of the growth, and then being reminded, because I've been on a similar journey over the last couple of years with healing. I've been doing it through the program of Al-Anon, and, healing. And I too just recently had an experience of where I finally didn't show up small. I didn't show up as that little girl. I was the adult for the first time in a long time and being in the presence of my mom. And it was the most out of body empowering experience ever, where I didn't have to be triggered by all of the chaos that was going on. And it really, I don't know if this is true for you too, but once you identify that and begin the healing process, there is so much freedom and things that begin to break away. Like, I truly believe that until we can heal that stuff, we're going, no matter how hard we work, no matter how much we try to do, our businesses, our other relationships, our lives are going to be affected. No matter, no, they're going to be affected. And until we grow and heal from that stuff, like, there are so many gifts on the other side that we couldn't even imagine.
100%. Because it's almost like I'm used to attaching my worth and my identity to the things that I'm working on. So, a couple of weeks ago with my journal, I was on this track. I was moving, I was going, doing all this stuff, and things got shifted and derailed a little bit. And I was sad and depressed for a couple of days. I'm like, what is this about? This is just like a minor setback. I don't understand why this is affecting me so much yet. And then I realized, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm placing my worth. Like, I'm going through the pattern of the thing that I do, right? And placing my worth in my outside achievements. And luckily, I had to reel myself back in around and wait a minute, that's not the case. Like, I can go help one child or help one family, and that is enough. And I am enough in that.
Yes, it's a process for those of us who have placed our worth on the outside to realize, like, our worth is in who we are and nobody else, and it's validated through God.
Mm-hmm.
And it's validated in that way. And so I love that you shared that. And so as you're older now, you're identifying all these things, and you had that experience with your stepdad growing up. What was it like to search for your partner in life? Were you on the edge of, like, caution? Did you see it at all come into play when you were, dating and all of the things and meeting your husband? Were you on the edge, or, kind of observing that part of it?
So dating for me was super interesting. I wanted to date to fall in love because I just wanted to be loved so bad. Like, I didn't want to just date to date. Like, I was super serious about it. I'm like, hey, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right. Right.
Yes.
Of course.
Yes.
Because of course I want to do everything right. Right. And so this is my second. I've been married twice because my first relationship, I found someone that would love me, yet it was as if I married my dad. I married a man I ran a business with him. And so we had ran a successful business together. And the next step in that was getting married. So it's almost like I had a business marriage because he was my dad. He was unemotional. He wasn't verbally abusive. He was super quiet, but he didn't ever let me into anything that was going on beneath the surface. It was very above the surface. And that was all that I was going to get. So he had a lot of work that he hadn't processed through yet. So I was married for a year and ended that marriage. And then I said, okay, I'm going to do this right the second time. And I wrote out all the things that I needed in someone. And I was strategic in wanting to fall in love with the right person. I feel like anybody can fall in love, but to fall in love with the right person, that's going to take some. So, I then wrote out all the things that I wanted in a spouse, and I would sit there and think about it and visualize it every single night. And my husband that I'm married to now, thankfully, came in and was super persistent. But I really struggled with feeling love from him. I had built up a wall that was so thick that he brought me flowers every single week. He's super patient with my emotions, just loving, caring, he's just absolutely amazing. He's like a rock and super stable, supportive, just all the good things in a man and a real man. And he's like, hey, and I was crying one night and I was like, I just don't feel loved. Right. And he's like, look, lady, if you don't feel loved now, you are never going to feel loved. And then just sat there silent. And so I cry more and then realized that I had to actually let him in and actually open up and begin to trust and go through a process with him. So that's been a big, big process for us of me I feel like fully surrendering and just fully opening my heart and trusting him because it was so closed off. I didn't even know how closed it was.
we don't realize it when we're in it, and it takes some time to really like become aware, and something has to happen. And it's like, okay. And, once get that awareness is when we can start to, figure out, okay, how do we heal from this? How do we grow from this? How can we change this? So having that, and, you have two boys, how has that worked for you in being a mom? And, where you've come from, and, not wanting your kids to, I don't know if this has been true for you, but in my experience, it's like one of my biggest fears for a long time was I didn't want my kids to ever feel like I did growing up. I wanted them to know that they were loved and whole. And, I had already broken a huge chain in our family dynamic by getting sober, but like, this is a big chain that's being broken in your family dynamic too. Like, your boys have a mom who was there, who was working on herself, and you're growing. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's been interesting seeing them, because I see their patterns, my patterns in them. Even like with my son being, like he started kindergarten, super lovey, love you, kiss me as he gets out the car. And then in first grade, he's 6 years old. He's like, okay, I'm not kissing you anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about, dude? You have to kiss me. Right. And I could just see him going internal, and I started to see the perfectionism in him start to come out. This year, it's been a big struggle with writing. His teacher said, do your best writing. And he had a really hard day one day, because to him, his best meant perfect. And so he would erase, and then he would get all stressed out, and then he started to get behind, and then he would start crying, and then he would erase some more. And it was just never good enough. And he really struggled with having to say the right things. And so these are all my patterns, right? So one day we were on the steps, and I was just loving on him one morning. So a way that I definitely broken the pattern is I touched them. Emotions in my family were not allowed to be expressed, mine at least, because theirs were so big. I felt like I didn't have space for me to express any of mine. So with them, I want to know what's going on with them. I want to know when they're allowed to say if they're angry at me, or if I hurt their feelings, or if something's going on. I allow them a place to express it. And so one day I was sitting on the steps with my older one, just holding him and just like trying to cherish the moment with him, kissing him. And I looked at him like, babe, I just love you so much. And I asked, like, do you love me? Like a mom. And then you like expect your child to be like, yes, mommy, I love you. And his response was, I don't know. I'm like, what? But for him, that was the truth, because he's really big about saying what's true for him. And so in that moment, he didn't feel love for me, so he wouldn't say it. Like, he won't just say something if it's not true. Because he wants to, and what the root of that is that he wants to be perfect. And he has to do it right, or else he won't do it. And so we've been working on breaking the cycle of having to do things absolutely perfect in every area of life. So we have those conversations where my mom wouldn't have known that that's what's driving me. Like, I understand, because I've been through it, and understand what drives me and what triggers me, and where I've struggled for so long. I can see based on his actions, and with a couple questions, figure out really what's underneath.
That's so powerful. I think that the greatest gift you're giving them is working on yourself, and allowing them to be open, and to know that they are heard, and to share, and it's okay with whatever's coming out. I mean, to hear your son say no, or, it's like, that's a powerful expression. And to know, and for him to know that that's totally okay, because you're loved right now, always, is so big, so huge. I love that.
I want to give him the space and the boundaries that, like, I didn't have, even with like little things, like if they say no, they don't want to kiss. I read in a book one time that actually keeping that boundary for them, and not like crossing their barrier and kissing them anyways. Like, you're like, oh, give grandma a kiss. And they're like, no. And then you do it anyways. That's telling them that their boundaries don't matter, and that it's okay for people to violate those. So I try and really respect, like, I wouldn't in that conversation make him say, no, mom, I love you. Be like, okay, well, I know you love me. Right. And so that's been a big conversation, or big awareness that I've tried to have with them also, that they're allowed to create boundaries. They're allowed to be mad. right? They're allowed to be in a poopy mood. Sometimes I don't like them to do it around me, right? Or like ruin the whole family dynamic. However, that's okay for them to have, and that we can either talk out of it if they want to, or they can just simmer in it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's making me think of the conversation we had. Mom was not her best self yesterday. And so we had a family meeting last night, and it was the first time we've been intentional about sitting down as a family and discussing what had happened and allowing them to, really share where they're at and what they felt from it and how they came. And it was just like, it's so powerful I know how powerful it is just to know that their feelings are very much okay, and to know that they're heard. So that is so beautiful. And so you started this kids gratitude journal. What prompted that? And tell me, where did that come from, prompted it, and, what you hope, what you see with where that is going.
So when my son was 6, I just felt like we were in this place of, he was always like, I want this and I want this. And I just felt like he was getting to the place where nothing was ever good enough. And that's from me, right? It's that from me that I'm constantly striving, constantly having to do more. And so I was like, you know what can I do? And my husband's had a gratitude journal for 5 years that he's kept, and he swears by it, and it's changed him. And I've done one off and on, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get him a gratitude journal. But the journal always just said, what are you grateful for? And so he would put down my mom, my dad, my strawberries, my iPad. And after doing it for about a year, we started to struggle with him wanting to put the same things over and over again. And so what I had realized was that he could only really appreciate the things that were almost right in front of him. Like, his brain didn't yet have the ability to see that he was grateful for the clouds in the sky and the rain and anything about himself. And so I wanted to give him language in order to be appreciative for other things and really appreciate the things around him in a greater depth. And at the same time, one of my goals was for him to be in the Bible. And I thought, okay, I'm going to write the Bible verses on cards, and we're going to put them on our table, and we're going to read one at dinner every night. We'll make that our routine. So we started to do that, and that came and it went, and we did it sometimes, didn't do it sometimes. And then kind of around at this similar time within this year, we started this prayer book. It's called The Circle Maker for kids. Mm-hmm. We started to write out prayers, and his prayers started to be kind of like the gratitude prompts. He didn't have language, or his brain didn't even have capacity to come up with different prayers all the time, or not that it had to be different, but he only had this one way of thinking. And I was like, man, I want to find something that can give him language to be grateful for things that aren't just right in front of him. And then I want to ground him in what God says about him, because my identity was in my achievements and what other people said and what my parents felt about me for so long. I'm like, if I could ground him in what God says about him and who he was created to be, man, take that and then take appreciation, and then to ground him in being able to pray and really express his feelings to God, and know that even though I'm going to fail him as mom, like you said, it must have been fate, because last night we had a really hard night too. But I wanted to give him a place where he could cry out and really be able to pray and know that I'm going to fail him. His dad is going to fail him. There are going to be ways that we are not going to be perfect for him, but God always will be perfect for him. God will never change. He's the same today, yesterday, and forever. And so I wanted to just give him that foundation to rely on. And so from all that was birthed this gratitude journal and devotional for kids, because I couldn't find anything out there like that. I could get it in other places, but we have way too much stuff going on in order to take all those places and add 3 more things onto our schedule. I needed it in one place for us to go to, and it'd be quick and simple and something he could do on his own and come to me when he needs help. And that's where it was birthed from.
I love that so much. One of the things that I struggle most with as a mom is specifically with my son. My daughter, I have 4 kids. So my daughter, she is the creative, the imagined. She says the most sweetest things. She is a little old soul. So with her, it's a lot easier to come up with those things. But with my son, he's a little more I don't know if closed off is the right word, but like trying to really get him to open up and see he has a little more selfish tendencies and a little more focused in on, what he wants and what he's doing. And so when I talk to him about, being grateful and gratitude, like you said, it's just like really only what's right here in front of him. And it's very streamlined and it's usually the same thing over and over. And so how do we teach our kids to be, a little more aware of what isn't just in front of them, but the bigger things, the other things, not even necessarily just the bigger things, but the other things that are going on in the world. So I absolutely love what you're doing here.
Thank you. It has totally changed our family. I mean, one day he came to me and I knew it was working then because we had gotten a new bed. They had a bunk bed and we got twin beds instead. And he came to me after he'd written in his journal and he's like, Mom, I just want to thank you for my bed. But I wrote bed in my journal, but I want you to know when I say bed, I mean my mattress and my bed. Because if you couldn't afford those, I'd be sleeping on the floor. And so I just wanted to thank you so, so much. And so just the fact that he said, I'd be sleeping on the floor, like just knowing that there are kids that sleep on the floor and knowing that there are people that don't have what he has, I was like, yes, like we are in the right direction and going in the right vein. Because I remember like my mom always saying, there's kids starving in other places, eat your food, right?
Yes.
Or like you want to bring up those stories, yet that didn't work, right?
Yeah.
Like went in one year and out the other. And this was able to produce a result to where he got that same message, but on his own. Like he discovered it for himself rather than me like nagging at him at it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I just love that. I am so excited. So where can we find you? Where can we find the journal?
So the journal is on Amazon. And since there's a million things on Amazon, if you search Kids Gratitude Journal by Jessica Lewis, my name, so Jessica and then Lewis, Lewis, you can find it there, or it's on my website, and all the information on me is on my website at www.kidsgratitudejournals.com. And then I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and my handle's at Gratitude Gives Life.
Oh, I love that so much. Is there anything else on your heart that you just want to share with everybody?
Maybe just that it's been interesting, the feedback that I've gotten from families, because the journal, when I first wrote it, I wrote it for him, for my son who's 7. And I was really surprised when I got feedback from a mom who has an 11-year-old and a 14-year-old son. And she told me how much they loved it. And at first I just thought it would be for kids like 6 to 10. And she's like, no, it's actually amazing because it's so simple. They can do it in a couple minutes, but it's thought provoking enough for them that they really enjoy writing those things out. And these are boys, and so I was even more surprised that boys would want to do it and that at that age. So I feel like a perfect age is from 7 to 16. And this mom explained that it's just given them time and she's been able to get insight into their world that she never even knew. Like it's almost like an amazing tool to get to know your children in a new way and know what's really going on in their head. Because every day there's a prayer prompt, and some of the prompts say like, God, I'm worried about this, or God, forgive me for this, or God, I need help with this. So you really get to see the kids' hearts in their journals and really see what's going on in their life that we might not be asking the questions to get, or at least for me, like I see things in there that I don't know that are going on necessarily.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that so much. And I'm super excited for you and, for the journal. I could definitely see how incredibly helpful that will be for so many families, who, especially moms, are like, with the boys specifically, it's like, how do you get in there and talk to them if they're a boy that's kind of, they don't want to talk. They don't want to share what's going on. And what a great tool for families to have. So thank you so much for sharing yourself with us and, coming on and sharing your journal. I will make sure to link you up in our show notes so people know where to find you. And wow, what a great conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Yes. And you guys remember, if you loved this episode, make sure you share it with your friends and family. Take a snapshot, tag both of us on your social media, and make sure to go over to iTunes and leave a 5-star review for the show. That way you help me get my message out, help Jessica get her message out. And I want to thank you so much again for tuning in. Hi, friends. If you enjoyed this episode of the Just As We Are podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would head on over to iTunes and leave me a 5-star review. Take a screenshot of today's episode and tag me at Katrina Lelly on your social media. If you haven't already, head on over to the Just As We Are podcast community on Facebook and hit join, where you will get to join more of the Just As We Are tribe. And remember that no matter where you are on your journey, you are completely whole and loved just as you are.